Could Taiwan withstand Chinese aggression? As Lee Hsi-ming put it, it is the onus of the Taiwanese people to decide their fate and fight for their existence. Here's what you need to remember. Taiwan's military must be able to survive the initial wave of PLA strikes against the country's critical assets and infrastructure, retaining the ability to counterattack following the initial PLA assault. In the midst of an unprecedented wave of threats and provocations from Beijing, Taipei is rapidly reforming its armed forces and modernizing key parts of its military. Taiwan's ongoing efforts run parallel to a new holistic approach known as the overall defense concept. But what exactly is the ODC, and how does it seek to change Taiwan's defense posture? The ODC was formulated in the late 2010 seconds by former Chief of General Staff, Admiral Lee Hsi-ming, described by former U.S. Defense Department official Drew Thompson as a revolutionary new approach to Taiwan's defense. The ODC is based on the core strategic realization that Taiwan's military cannot win a conventional war against China in the Taiwan Strait, nor can it impose decisive costs on the People's Liberation Army through attrition. Not only can this underlying reality not be meaningfully altered, but the gulf in conventional military capabilities between China and Taiwan is only likely to grow in coming decades as the PLA continues to modernize at a breakneck pace. Thus, according to the ODC's proponents, Taiwan must adopt an asymmetric defensive posture to ensure its security in the coming decades. That is, the country must focus its limited resources on deterring and, if that fails, defeating a Chinese invasion and occupation of Taiwan. One of the ODC's core pillars is force preservation. Taiwan's military must be able to survive the initial wave of PLA strikes against the country's critical assets and infrastructure, retaining the ability to counterattack following the initial PLA assault. This approach includes electronic countermeasures like anti-jamming and redundant, decentralized communications systems, as well as a force composition focus on mobility and concealment. Force preservation has become especially important with the rapid growth of Chinese anti-access area denial capabilities in the Pacific. The PLA may not be able to defeat U.S. assets in the Pacific outright, but it has the means to contain and delay U.S. forces long enough to complete its occupation of Taiwan. Thus, according to the ODC, it falls on the Taiwanese military to deny the Chinese invasion force for as long as possible. Asymmetric weapon systems, including sea mines, certain types of advanced unmanned aerial vehicles, and coastal missile defense installations, are crucial to this endeavor, as are the recent Army reforms empowering regional commanders to make time-sensitive decisions concerning troop movements and deployments in a decentralized fashion. Although Lee Hsi-ming went to great lengths to stress that Taiwan would appreciate any assistance from Washington and that continued U.S. military support is integral to the country's security, the plan's core tenets are designed to stand on their own in the worst-case scenario of no U.S. military assistance. Taiwan's military will not assume that the U.S. will sacrifice American lives to defend the island, he wrote in an explanatory article published by The Diplomat. Taiwan will seek to inflict the most damage on the invading forces in the littoral zone, where their home field advantage is the greatest. Taiwanese forces will then shift to preventing the PLA from establishing beachheads. If the PLA gets boots on the ground, then not just the army but also the civilian population will be mobilized for a whole-of-society guerrilla effort to prevent the occupying forces from advancing inland and establishing resupply chains. At that point, every Taiwanese citizen will be conscripted into what could escalate into a wholesale urban war. As Lee Hsi-ming put it, it is the onus of the Taiwanese people to decide their fate and fight for their existence. Taiwan can win a war with China. When Chinese President Xi Jinping spoke to the 19th Party Congress about the future of Taiwan last year, his message was ominous and unequivocal. We have firm will, full confidence, and sufficient capability to defeat any form of Taiwan independence secession plot. We will never allow any person, any organization, or any political party to split any part of the Chinese territory from China at any time or in any form. This remark drew the longest applause of his entire 3-hour speech, but it's not a new message. The invincibility of Chinese arms in the face of Taiwanese separatists and the inevitability of reunification are constant Chinese Communist Party themes. At its base, the threat made by Xi is that the People's Liberation Army has the power to defeat the Taiwanese military and destroy its democracy by force. If need be, Xi understands the consequences of failure here. We have the determination, the ability, and the preparedness to deal with Taiwanese independence, he stated in 2016. And if we do not deal with it, we will be overthrown. China has already ratcheted up economic and diplomatic pressure on the island since the 2016 election of Tsai Ing-wen and the independence-friendly Democratic Progressive Party. Saber-rattling around the Taiwan Strait has been common, but China might not be able to deliver on its repeated threats. Despite the vast discrepancy in size between the two countries, there's a real possibility that Taiwan could fight off a Chinese attack, even without direct aid from the United States. Two recent studies, one by Michael Beckley, a political scientist at Tufts University, and the other by Ian Easton, a fellow at the Project 2049 Institute, in his book The Chinese Invasion Threat, Taiwan's Defense and American Strategy in Asia, provide us with a clearer picture of what a war between Taiwan and the mainland might look like, grounded in statistics, training manuals, and planning documents from the PLA itself, and informed by simulations and studies conducted by both the U.S. Defense Department and the Taiwanese Ministry of National Defense. This research presents a very different picture of a cross-strait conflict than that hawked by the party's official announcements. Chinese commanders fear they may be forced into armed contest with an enemy that is better trained, better motivated, and better prepared for the rigors of warfare than troops the PLA could throw against them. A cross-strait war looks far less like an inevitable victory for China than it does a staggeringly risky gamble.